I would get to work after a long bus ride, and I just hyperventilated the whole time. I would leave my classroom breathing into a bag. I wasn't myself. I just wasn't okay. I had this anxiety and I had this depression weighing on me. And at a certain point, my husband said to me, he said, "Did you ever learn emuna and bitachon? I know you believe in God, but did you ever learn in depth, really, how who God is, how He runs the world? Just learn a little bit more." It was mind blowing. I realized for the first time, I said, yes, I follow the Torah, I keep the mitzvot, I do the things I'm supposed to do, but I don't think I have a relationship with God. I didn't have a relationship with Him where I felt Him by my side and I felt Him holding me, and I turned to Him as a father. That I didn't have with Him.
Welcome everyone to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have a very special guest, Yaffa Palti, the fabulous Yaffa, who is an inspiring Torah educator, teacher, and she is going to share with us some of the ideas that she got from her life on how to gain more resilience through the many changes of her life. But I'm not going to take away her story. I'm going to let her start herself. Yaffa, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. What an honor, finally, to be on this amazing, amazing podcast.
I feel like I know you, Yaffa, even though we never met.
I know. Well, we met once. We did meet once in person.
We
Finally,
did.
yeah, we finally did. But but I know you from your videos, and you know me from mine, and it's great that we were
Right.
finally able to collaborate a little bit together. So I'm really looking forward to our talk today.
100%. So Yaffa, start us off on your story. I mean, your story begins as somebody whose father became sick when you were very young. That must have been a very big hardship on you.
Yeah, I was a teenager when he was diagnosed. He was already sick a few years before that, until we figured out what it was, and it was multiple sclerosis, which it's a very debilitating disease. There's a few different types. He had none of them are good, of course, but he had the worst of all three, which was chronic progressive. So it was just slowly but surely it shut down his whole body until he ended up passing away from it. So that was certainly you know experiencing that as a teenager, and I was the second to oldest of a very large family. So my mother was expecting when he was diagnosed. So we
Oh,
still
wow.
had little kids and babies, and so it was it was a lot.
I'm
It
just thinking
changed
about
our lives a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking about like the turbulence that a teenager goes through, as it is, the teenagers and the anxieties and the angst and
yeah.
all the things. So going through that while you were a teenager must have been, and having such a large family and being probably responsible for so many siblings and so forth, that must have been very big on you.
Yeah, no question about it. And my mother had to work full time. My father couldn't work anymore to take care of
Right.
everyone. And plus, on top of having, and I'm one of 10 biological siblings, we also took in a
Wow.
bunch of foster children. I had at the time, about 8 foster siblings living with us. Also, we opened our home to kids from abused families. So there was a lot going on in my home. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
What
that's
what
a whole other story. But
what made your mother decide to do that? Like when she was going through so much herself?
Well, it started before. It started a little bit before he was diagnosed.
Mm.
So, but then it just came to my father said, and obviously, it making sure it wasn't too hard on my mother. He said, just because I'm sick doesn't mean we close the doors on other people, And it was
Incredible.
just, yeah, and it was just these were Jewish kids, from Jewish families who came from abused homes, and they needed a place. And it wasn't something that, it wasn't like my parents' lifelong dream. It just kind of fell into our lap. Sometimes a chesed opportunity, an opportunity to do kindness for others just falls into your lap, and you have to recognize that that's what it is and that's what you're there for. And, thank God my parents, had a big, beautiful home, and they said, whatever we have is to share with others. It's not just for us to keep for ourselves. So
Wow.
that's what we did. So it was,
Incredible. And how did that like affect you as a teenager? Did you ever resent all this outpouring of giving that your father was ill? Did you have questions about it? Like, how did that shape you into the Yaffa Palti that you became?
where do I even begin? So there was a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that were just, of course, a lot of uncertainty, of course, a lot of what does this mean? Where do I belong? Where do I fit in? What's going on? A lot of questions. But really, my mother just kind of instilled in us that we're going to live in a home of simcha. We're going to live in a happy home. And no matter what's going on, we're not going to let this win. We're gonna let our strength and our inner resilience. We're gonna persevere, and we're gonna live our lives. And we're not gonna let it change our personalities. We're not gonna let it change our mindset. We're not gonna let it change who we are and how we deal with life. So without words, that was just the attitude that she modeled for us, and
Right.
and that's what we did.
Wow.
That's what we did.
Wow. You that's something that comes through very strongly. I mean, you just put it in a nutshell. Like, you always seem to radiate this happiness, this positivity, this optimism. And I guess that's
Yeah.
what people really why people gravitate to you, because you, despite what you've gone through. I mean, I didn't know anything about your past or about your stories, but it just seems like you have this general optimism, but it's not this phony optimism. It feels like a more real optimism, like a real genuine optimism that goes through and through, that pervades your being.
Can I
So
can I
tell
tell you
us.
something before you continue?
Sure, of
Just
course.
because you said that, I remember a few years ago, I decided to go off sugar for different health reasons, whatever. And the third day that I was off sugar was like the hardest day, and I was getting a little impatient. And like it was like the first time I ever remember I was just being like short with my kids a little, and my oldest daughter came over to me. She gave me the biggest hug, and she said, "Ema, can you be off sugar a little more often?" I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Finally, we're seeing this side of you."
Wow.
you know, Finally, I've been
Wow.
waiting years for you to get upset and frustrated. But
That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting because, like, often people who are naturally a certain way, like a
Mhm.
natural optimist, won't really relate to other people who are not naturally optimistic, or naturally worriers, or naturally some other, thing, because they just didn't have to relate to it. But yet you seem to have really absorbed different tools and different ideas of how to change our mindset and to change our perspective on life.
Yeah, I really tried, because as I got older and different things, kept coming up. We started living life, we started adulting, and decisions we have to make, and things that happen. And a lot of times, even though I had worked on my positive attitude and my optimism and my inner happiness, whatever words you want to use, it's been tested again and again and again. No matter
Mhm.
how much you possess of something of a certain characteristic, it's always tested. So I've learned how to maintain a mindset that no matter what's going on, we can learn how to navigate through it in the healthiest way, and in a way that's actually going to be productive and not just going to
Mm.
kind of keep us in that space. So over the years,
Right.
that's what I was able to develop.
Well, I'd love to hear some of those methods, but maybe first you want to start with some of those challenges that you did go through, so we can understand more about your story.
Sure. Okay. So, okay, we have limited time today, so I don't know how much I could say, and I don't, I'll just start talking, I guess, and we'll see where it takes us. So, I after my high school, I've had quite a journey through my high school years as well. A lot of school shifting. I've been to 4 different high schools, trying to find my place, really, really where I belong. How could I? I was in religious schools, and trying to find myself in Judaism.
Mm.
Where how could I be a child of God and serve God in the way that He wants me to, but yet how to be me. And I had this adventurous side that the schools didn't always appreciate. So I needed to learn, how can I be me without having to be in a box that people put me in. So when you're a teenager, it's a little bit hard to really find that place. So the schools, kind of didn't
Absolutely.
appreciate my little journey of, well, I guess, self discovery. But finally, I
So
did
you mean
find.
you're a more creative self, you're a more unique person? Is that what you're trying to say? And
Yeah, I
you
was
weren't able to
definitely,
express yourself? Did
definitely
you
out of the
feel that
box.
did you feel that Judaism suppressed that? Was that something that
So here's
in
the thing.
Judaism you didn't?
At the time, I probably thought it was Judaism suppressing it, without realizing it was the
Mm.
school rules that were suppressing it. And
Mhm. Mhm.
finally, I was able to come to this mature recognition and realization that, oh no, there's absolutely place for me in Judaism. Maybe I just didn't fit so well in a structured school setting.
Mhm.
So, and the truth is, the last school that I went to, they embraced me for my talents, my creativity. They were able to really to get to know me, and I shone over there. I blossomed. I shone. It
Mhm.
was an amazing experience for me because of that. So,
Mhm.
I think I needed to just kind of find my place, and I did, and I'm so thankful for that. But after that whole experience, I ended up meeting my husband, which is a whole story in itself. I guess I can share it quickly over here. So I grew up in Flatbush. I was in I guess you could say a more or less, typical community, family, school system in the
Religious, like
religious world, exactly,
Mhm.
in the Orthodox world. And the way we do it is what we call shidduchim, which is people call up and they say, "Oh, you have a daughter. I know a boy. I have a boy. I know a girl. Whatever it is," and they kind of try to match people together. So people, kept calling. I have this guy for you. I have that guy for you. I have the other guy for you. And I kept dating, and I was going out with this guy, with that guy, with the other one. They're wonderful people. A lot of these guys from Flatbush, from Borough Park, from Muncie, from Lakewood, from all around the New York area. Wonderful, wonderful guys, but none of them were really what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody who was more of a visionary, somebody who had a bigger vision for life, somebody who wanted to be a community leader, somebody who wanted to teach Torah, somebody who wanted to make a difference in the global Jewish community somehow, or in the world. And many of the guys I was dating, I found them to be more followers than leaders, or just more neutral about life. So it really wasn't for me. So I kept, one after the other, I was just kind of turning them down. And people kept coming over to me and saying, Yaffa, the guy that you're looking for, you're not going to find him in New York. You have to go to Israel. He's in Israel. He's not here. But I knew that I belonged in New York because my family needed me. As we said before, my father was not well. My mother was taking care of everybody. I really needed to be there for my younger siblings. My community needed me. I was so involved in so many community projects, and I had so many students. I was teaching. There was so much for me to do in New York. And I kept saying, I'm not leaving New York now. I don't have to start globetrotting to find my husband. And the sentence I kept saying was, I said, God knows my address. He knows my
Mhm.
address. He'll send him to me. I don't have to run around the world to try to find him. Fast forward, after a few years of dating, I was actually feeling very burnt out from it. It was just like every week, one guy after the other. And it was just a lot of dating for a few years in a row. And I was feeling very burnt out. And I took a deep breath and I said to God, all right, God, let's make a deal. Okay. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate that you're sending me all these guys. I know there are other girls out there who aren't getting all these phone calls, and I am so thankful. Thank you for thinking of me. But to be honest with you, I don't need that for my self esteem. Like, I'm really fine. I'm okay. I'd rather if like the phone call stopped a little bit. I just need to breathe until it's the right guy. When it's the right guy, call me again. Thank you. Okay, that was my conversation.
What a deal. What a deal with God,
Right?
right?
I was like, come on,
Yeah.
just go take care of someone else now. Um, and that was it. And believe it or not, the phone call stopped coming, and I felt myself like
Mhm.
just kind of rejuvenating a little bit and catching my breath, getting back into myself. Having that little break was very necessary. Meanwhile, my parents were freaking out. My mother was like,
Mhm.
nobody's calling. I'm like, don't worry, we got a thing. We're good. We're fine. It's between me
Mhm.
and him.
Mhm.
Anyway, one day I get a phone call from a friend of mine. Um, she calls me up. Her name is Shandy, and she says, hi, Yaffa. This was before cell phones, okay? So it was an actual
Mhm.
phone call. She said, hi, Yaffa. Your husband is sitting on my couch. I was like, why is he on your couch? Send him over. Turns out,
Right.
right? And then that was it. There was the end of the phone call. I was laughing. I was like, okay, fine. She met someone who reminds her of me. Very nice. And I hung up, and I didn't know that behind the scenes, she had actually met the person who was going to be my husband. And the reason that happened was because my husband is from Mexico. Okay.
Mhm.
And he was learning in a yeshiva in Jerusalem.
Mhm.
So at the time. This was right before Pesach, right before Passover. And he was on his way home from Israel to Mexico, and he made a stopover in New York where I was living. He to do some shopping, buy matzah, buy a new suit, whatever it was. While he was there, he had a whole list of girls and young women that he was going to date. So he was staying at a friend's house. That friend has a neighbor who saw this guy coming in and out. This girl who was my age, her name was Leah. She saw this guy coming in and out, so she asked her neighbor, "Hey, who is this guy who's staying by you?" He said, "Oh, he's my friend from yeshiva." She's like, "Oh, tell me about him. He's this, he's that." She said to him, she said, I just met someone who's looking for exactly that kind of guy. And
Oh, wow.
she's talking about me.
About
I
you.
had just met her a few weeks before that. She remembered my name. She remembered everything I was looking for. I was very impressed. So he said, "Oh, wonderful. Thank you." And he kind of like added my name to the bottom of his list. A few days later, he ends up in Borough Park visiting another friend's family. That friend, also from yeshiva, has a sister who was a good friend of mine. This was Shandy. And he went
Hmm.
to visit her family. And that's when she called me. Now, I didn't know that behind the scenes, she was pushing him. She was like, "You have to go out with Yaffa. You have to go out with Yaffa. She's your wife. She's your wife." And he's like, "Okay, but I have a whole list of girls here, And the truth is, on paper, I had a lot less in common with him than these other girls had. Because
Mm-hmm.
my husband is Latin, he's Sephardi, and his father's a rabbi. All of the girls on his list either had some kind of Latin connection, they were Sephardi, fathers were rabbis, American, Ashkenazi. My father was a businessman. You know what I mean? So
Wow. Wow. What a difference,
it
right?
was like,
Wow.
yeah, he was just like, "Come on, like I have all these other girls." She was pushing and pushing. Finally, one day he said to her, "You know what? I realized that I don't have anything doing tonight. If she can go out with me tonight, fine, I'll go out with her." Okay. This was like 4 p.m. I remember Shandy calls me back. This was a few days later. She goes, "Could you go out with my brother's friend tonight?" I'm like, I was sitting on the floor. I was a teacher. It was like color war in school or something. And I'm painting. I have paint from head to toe. I was like, "Tonight, that means in 2 hours." She goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Okay, what's his name? Where's he from? Do we know anything about him?" She was like, "He's from Mexico." I was like, "Okay, that's cool. And she was like,
Mm.
"I don't really know his name. I'm not sure." I'll try to find it out to you by the time the date happens tonight. And I called my mother at work. "Can I go out with Shandy's brother's friend tonight?" She's like, "Well, do we know anything about him?" I was like, "Not really. You know, he's from Mexico." She's like, "Anything illegal happening there?" So I said, "Here's the thing. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. What I do know is he's not a serial killer. He's Shandy's brother's friend. Like, come on.
Mhm.
Worst comes to
Mhm.
worst, it won't be a good date." And this was my first phone call ever since I asked the powers that be for a little break. So I said, "You know what? And it's Mexico. It's cool." I said, "Let me try." So we did go out. And the truth is, like, immediately I said, this, what a breath of fresh air. This was much more of what I was looking for. He was this visionary.
Mhm.
He had, uh, he was an independent thinker, and there was so much of what I was looking for. Now, the interesting thing is that we continued dating. Of course, he actually dated somebody else the next night. He double dated because
Oh, my.
he already had that plan from
You
before.
ready?
I was the
Oh,
one who
okay.
messed up his plans. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I don't care. He picked me. What do I care, right? So,
Right.
I'm like, "Fine, go out with whoever you want. Come home to
Right.
me." So, so we ended up dating. He actually postponed his ticket a little bit longer, and we continued dating. And here's the thing. And then he went home for Pesach to Mexico. He came back to New York afterwards. Instead of going back to Israel, came back to continue dating me. And what's interesting, by the way, I didn't know his name until our fifth date. Fifth date.
I can't believe this.
Because I
Wow.
wasn't, my friend wasn't sure. She was like, "I think it's like
Right.
Nissan, Paltiel." Like, she really wasn't sure. So I was like, "Okay, I'll just keep dating him." But I can't be on the date and say, "Excuse me, sir, what's your name?" Like, we just
What's your
dated three
name?
times. Like, so finally on the fifth date, I was like, and if we know anything, in the shidduch system, a fifth date means it's getting serious, right? So
Right.
I'm dating, so I'm looking at him and I was like, "I don't know, this guy might pay my mortgage one day. Like, I need to know what his name is. And here's the thing: the reason why nobody was sure what his name was is because it's a weird name. Like, I'm used to dating guys like Maishi Friedman, Chaim Schwartz. My
Right.
husband's name is Niso Palti. It sounds, I don't know.
Miso Palti.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, it's an interesting name. It sounds like, I don't know,
Right.
like a sushi roll. It's like I'll take a Niso
Well,
Palti. So
Niso, I guess, is from Nace, and what a miracle. I mean, Nace is a miracle. What a
exactly.
miracle how this came about.
Totally, totally.
Right.
But I never heard that name before. So to me, it was like, what? And also my friend was like, "I don't know. Like, I think Nissan." Like, nobody was sure. So finally on the fifth date, I said to him, "You have a very interesting name. How do you spell it?" So then he took out a paper, he had a napkin, he took out a pen, and he wrote it. I was like, oh, that's his name. Let me memorize it. So finally, after date 5, I knew his name. Anyway, the bottom line is we dated a little longer, and he was interested right away. For me, it really took me some time, and we continued dating, and a couple of months went by, and he was kind of waiting to move forward. He was ready to get engaged, and I was very hesitant. I found myself putting up these walls, like I was blocked a little bit.
Mm.
Intellectually, I wanted to continue dating him. Intellectually, he was really exactly what I was looking for. He was everything I asked God for. But I realized that I couldn't connect emotionally, and I couldn't figure out why right away
Mm.
until I had to sit down and
Mm.
be very honest with myself. And I realized that marrying him would mean that I would have to give up everything I ever knew. I would have to give up all of my family minhagim, all my customs that I grew up with. They're going to change now from Ashkenazi to Sephardi. I was never going to live in New York again. There was nothing for him in New York. Most likely, we
Mm.
were going to move to Israel. Maybe one day end up in Mexico. Like there was nothing else there was nothing for him in the U.S. at all. I was going to have to say goodbye to so many things, move away from everyone I knew, move away from everything I knew. My Havara, I was going to have to go from saying good Shabbos to Shabbat Shalom. It sounds
Right.
little, but every single thing that I ended up having to change was a loss of my identity. I had to lose
Right.
something of who I was. So I realized, and I was young, I was 21, and I had at that age, I said, I have to give up everything I ever knew and start an
Right.
entirely new life. And I realized that's what was blocking me from connecting emotionally. And I had to
That's so
say,
interesting.
yeah. And by the way, remember what I said before that I always say, I forgot to add this in. I always say that God knows my address. It was he literally ended up on my doorstep. Like he had no reason to be,
Right.
it was on my door. So, sometimes we have to know, we just have to believe that God really knows where we are. He takes care of us. We just have to stay and do what we know is the right thing to do. And he's going to be there.
So
So at,
So how did you get over that though? Like here's someone who's so it's not anything familiar, nothing that you're
yeah,
used to. And you just shared also how just a few years before that you were really trying to find yourself in high school and find that unique self.
yeah,
And here you finally found that unique identity of who you are and you have to change a lot of that identity and
exactly.
change your family surroundings, everything to move to where he is. How
Yes.
did you deal with that? How
Yeah.
did you finally understand that that's what it was?
So that was the tough part. So how sometimes we always ask God for signs, right? But we don't always know to look for the signs when we see them.
Mm,
And I decided I was going to ask God for a sign. I need to know, is this the person I'm supposed to be married? Like married to? I intellectually it feels right, but I need to be able to connect emotionally. And I
mhm.
said, show me some signs. And he did. I don't know if we have time to get into that, but literally there were signs that were so blatant and so there and so clear. I was like, okay, fine, God, I get it. I'll do this. And that's when I had to really be honest with myself and come out and realize that the reason I was having such a hard time connecting emotionally was because I realized I was going to have to make all of those changes and I don't think I was ready for them. So
Mm,
that's when I had to sit down with myself and say, okay, Yaffa, listen, you asked God for this person. Now he's giving him to you, and you don't want him just because you can have to make some changes in life. It's like you're slapping
mm,
God in the face. I realized God was telling me, fine, you can have anyone you want from New York and stay in your comfort zone the rest of your life. I am giving you what you asked for, but you're going to have to grow into being the person who deserves what you're asking for. Like maybe I was
mm,
asking for something that was still above me, and I had to become that in order to
mhm.
to deserve what I actually really wanted. So I said,
That's interesting.
right?
Is that like, it's interesting to look at change in that way, like, maybe you have to grow into that, the discomfort is there maybe f to cause you to grow into that new person that you need to become.
Exactly. That's what I realized at that moment. I said, fine, I could marry anyone and just stay in New York. But who am
Mm,
I going to really grow into the person I need to be? I need to learn to get out of my comfort zone, and I did. And that's when I said, fine, I need to do this, and I have to let myself open up. And that the next date, I was able to open up to him and tell him all of the things I was hesitant about, and all the things I was scared about, and all the reasons why I was like, blocking myself. And everything I said to him, he had such a great answer for. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, you win. Fine, let's do this. you know, and that was the first of so many decisions in my adult life that I was going to have to choose what was right over what was easy.
Hmm.
That was
It's
like,
not easy to choose that, right? It's not easy to choose what's right over what's easy.
no, we always go for what's easy, what's comfortable, what's fast, what's fun, you know? And that's what I always wanted to do. That's how we like to live life. It's comfortable, but
Right,
we can't expand ourselves like that. We have to choose what's right
right.
over what's easy.
So what was the next challenge that you found after that, that you had to choose what was right?
Whew. So we moved to Israel right away. And I was the only person really that I knew there. I had an aunt, I had some cousins, but nothing, no one that I was really close with, no one that was in my circles of life, and nobody that I didn't really know anybody there. No friends. All of my friends stayed around the New York Lakewood area, New York, New Jersey. Um, I really didn't know anybody there. It was not easy. Now remember, this was 1998. Okay, so
Mhm,
long distance was expensive. We did not have
mhm.
the internet. We definitely didn't have cell phones. I moved to the other side of the world. I was
Right.
far. And I was the first one in my family to get married and the first one to move away. Everybody else was still at home, having fun, doing all their regular things. I left my mother, my siblings, my sick father. I left all my
Mhm.
friends. I left my jobs. I was so busy with a million jobs all over the place. And I was running to events every day and I was just busy. And I moved to Israel with a brand new, strange person who was, by the
Mm.
way, so different than my father and brothers. Like it was a whole adjustment, and new customs and new everything. And I was getting rid of all the other parts of me. And it was very, very, very hard. I was also, thank God for this blessing, but it was hard at the time. I was newly pregnant as well, you know.
Oh, wow.
So getting used to a new body and feeling different, everything was different. And I wanted to live in a place where it would be easy. My husband was learning in Kollel, right? He was studying in yeshiva. I wanted to live in a place that was convenient for him. I didn't have a
Mm,
job yet. I was at home. So let's live where it's convenient for him without taking into account that there were hardly any Americans who lived there. There were not many young couples who lived there. It was an older neighborhood and community, very Israeli, or not necessarily only Israeli. There were people from other places, but there were many French people and South Americans. And I needed Americans. I needed English. I needed people
mm,
my age. And I just kind of put all of my needs onto the back burner. And
mm,
I struggled with something that I like to call the Eshes Chayil syndrome. Okay, what does that mean? Eshes Chayil is a Hebrew terminology um, for the woman of valor, like this perfect, wonderful, amazing wife, right? And it's a beautiful concept that we always learn to grow up to be that Eshes Chayil, to be that woman, that queen, to match the king that is our husband's. And it's a beautiful concept. But I think I, and probably many other people, took it out of context. And I understood it. And that's why I
mhm,
call it the Eshes Chayil syndrome, because to me, I took that ideal woman, that amazing, incredible woman of valor to mean that she has to be perfect at all times, look perfect,
mm,
behave perfect, speak perfect, make the perfect food, take care of the perfect home, make her husband a king, and she herself has absolutely no needs. She herself has nothing. I don't need anything from anyone. I just take care of everybody else, right? So I kind of fell into that Eshes Chayil syndrome. And I didn't share all the struggles that I was feeling inside with my husband because he's my king. I have to treat him like a king. Which is true, by the way, but I also have to make sure that I recognize the queen that I am, but I wasn't. I was kind of like a servant, right?
right, right.
I'm just here to serve him without realizing that he also wants to serve me. But he can't serve me if I don't tell him what my needs are.
Mm,
But I couldn't have needs because I had to be perfect. So it was a little bit of a difficult cycle, right? So I was struggling a lot being so far from home, couldn't call anyone, couldn't talk to anyone because we were counting every penny. Everything in life was going on without me. And not only that, but right after we got there, the Intifada started. The second
mm,
Intifada, the buses blowing up all over the place and suicide bombers and restaurants blowing up. And it was a nightmare. And very, very, very difficult for me. And I kind of started experiencing these symptoms that I couldn't place, couldn't understand. Remember, this is 1998. Nobody had verbiage for any of this. And I certainly didn't have the language to express anxiety, depression. I didn't know any of that. I just felt like this dark cloud above me. I felt like this anxiousness inside of me. I felt like, it was just these symptoms I didn't understand. We spoke about before that I was working on, being that optimistic person, and I was happy and I was at peace and easygoing, and everything was just roses and unicorns and butterflies, and everything was just wonderful. Always knew how to look at life from a positive perspective. But so I wasn't used to all of this, and it was heavy. It was difficult, and it got worse and worse. And I really didn't share most of it with my husband. I shared. I mean, he knew some of it because he took one look at me, and I just wasn't me.
Right.
But most of it I just kept inside, and I smiled, and I tried to make believe everything was okay. And and I did a lot of, I was also very, very bored, which was not good. Remember, this was before the internet. There was not that much to do. I'm pregnant, sitting on my couch all day. I had an apartment the size of a bedroom, the size of a closet. So it took me 10 minutes to clean up. Like, what else was I supposed to do? There was nobody to talk to there. So, this is, just, I'm not going to tell you all these details. This part is maybe not as relevant, but I did end up teaching. He said to me, why don't you go teach in some of the seminaries? And I was like, me? I'm 22 years old at this point. Like, who's going to hire me? The seminary girls are 18, 19. Like, who's going to hire me? He's like, just go try. Worst comes to worst, you'll come back and sit on the couch again, And I did. And it was a
Right.
whole story in itself. I did apply and I got the job. And thank God that changed a lot for me when I started working and teaching. But it didn't change everything. I would sometimes get to work after like a long bus ride. Remember, this is Jerusalem. I would get to work after a long bus ride, and I just hyperventilated the whole time. I would leave my classroom, breathing into a bag. I wasn't myself. I just wasn't okay. I had this anxiety, and I had this depression weighing on me. But again, I didn't know what it was. And my husband started noticing
Mm.
some things. And I had one baby, then I had another baby. And at a certain point, my husband said to me, he said, did you ever learn emuna and bitachon? What does that mean? That is,
Mm.
learning about, faith in God and trusting God. And I said, me? Look at me. I'm wearing a wig. I'm wearing a skirt. I keep Shabbat. What do you mean? Like, of course I believe in God. He said, no. I know you believe in God. I wouldn't have married you if you didn't. Okay. I know you believe in God. But did you ever learn in depth, really, how who God is, how he runs the world? Just learn a little bit more. I said, no, I don't think I did. He said, okay, let's get a book, a sefer, let's get a book, and let's learn about emuna and bitachon, about faith and belief in God. I said, okay. I started learning. It was mind blowing. I realized for the first time, I said, yes, I follow the Torah, I keep the mitzvot, I do the things I'm supposed to do, but I don't think I have a relationship with God.
Hmm.
I didn't have a relationship with him where I felt him by my side and I felt him holding me. And I turned to him as a father that I didn't have with him. and
Wow.
and it changed everything for me. And it took a little while, a few weeks, a few months, but all my symptoms disappeared. I was back to
Hmm.
myself, and I was able to really, really live the life that I was supposed to live in Israel. I started teaching in a bunch of different seminaries. For those of you watching who don't know, that's like a gap year for
Right.
for yeshiva girls who want to study in Israel after they finish high school before they go to college. They go to Israel for a year. So I was teaching in all of those seminaries, all over the place, doing a million, using, all of my creativity, my talents, my strengths. It was the best, the most amazing thing.
So I
And
want to understand from this.
yeah.
First of all, like what is it that you learned in terms of faith in God or trust in God that helped you? Like, what are some tools that you can give us? But before we get to that, are you trying to say that, a person should not have needs, they should suppress their needs, and that faith could take over? Or are you saying that it just helps you to really understand what your needs are?
Okay. I'm so happy you brought that back up because I had forgotten to go back to that part. So what I had realized was the more I recognized who I am in uh, relation to God, the more I recognize that I am a human being and I'm allowed to have needs and I am supposed to have needs
Mm-hmm.
because God created me with needs. Right? One of the blessings we say every morning, I'll say it in Hebrew first, Sha'asa li kol tzarki. We always define that to mean that God provides us with all our needs, which He does, of course. But we could take it a step deeper. What I realized at that point was Sha'asa li kol tzarki also means that He created me with needs. He created me with all my
Right.
needs because I'm supposed to have needs because we're supposed to be interdependent beings, right? Not to confuse with codependent. Interdependent
Right.
means that we're there for each other. And I said, I'm supposed to have the most emotionally intimate relationship with my husband, but I can't because I'm not expressing what my needs are to him. I'm not expressing my fears, my failures, my desires, my dreams, my goals, my needs, my legitimate needs. I'm not expressing any of those to him because I am the perfect wife who just lives in like a glass behind a glass wall, right?
Mm.
So that's when I
So
realized that
I I think so many women suffer from that,
yes.
and like, how would you say, when can a woman or any person really know when it's something that's a real legitimate need, or when it's just being self-centered and just they should overcome their needs? Like, how do you make that distinction? And did your understanding of your relationship with God help you in making that, in forming that understanding?
Yeah, that is a very good question. So to answer the first question, the second question first, yes, this is how I was able to understand the importance of needs in the first place by understanding them
Mm.
in relation to God, because God wants us. He created us with needs so that we can turn to Him and recognize that we're dependent on Him, right? That we can't do anything without His help. And that's when I realized that I'm supposed to be able to turn to my husband for help with things, right? Just the
Mm.
same way I turn to God for help with things. Now, how do you know if the needs are legitimate? So,
Right. Like a chocolate bar right now, or a piece of chocolate cake right now. Is that a need, or is that a want, or is that
mhm.
something I could overcome? Or, or is something selfish, or is something just taking care of what I legitimately need?
So here's how I see it. That our my job in order to create emotional intimacy with my husband is to
Mm.
learn to be vulnerable with him and to express what my needs are to him. At the
Mhm.
same time, I know that becoming vulnerable is a risk because it means that the person might not be able to fulfill those needs. And yet, I just exposed what they are to him. So I had to
Right.
learn that my job is to express them to him. Whether or not he could fulfill them is another story. And I need to learn that I could still take care of myself even if he can't take care of them for me. Meaning, even whether he tries, whether he doesn't try, that's not the point. I could learn that I could live a certain way and take it, but at the same time, I still have to make sure that I express them to him. And I could teach
Mm.
him how to understand my needs a little bit better. Because just because we have the needs doesn't mean they're equipped to take care of those needs. They might not know how to
Mhm.
speak in a different way if that's what we need them to do. They might not know how to help us if we're feeling depressed. They might not know. But first of all, just being able to express that to him was a game changer. And I was able to say, I don't even know if you can do anything for me, but I just want, what happened? Sorry. I don't even know if you can do anything for me, but I just need you to know how I'm feeling,
Mm.
right? This is how I'm
Right.
feeling, and just to sit and talk about it and have a conversation about it. So that's a very important distinction. I am not dependent on him to fulfill my needs. I need to
Mm.
learn that I could take care of my needs. At the same time, I want to give him the opportunity to do it. And I
Mm.
want to be able to express to him what those needs are so that he can get to know me a little better and so that we could create a closeness with each other. Does that make sense?
Wow, of course. I mean, I'm just picturing you as a newlywed, like coming to that understanding, and learning how to communicate those very vulnerable needs, and it takes a lot, but that makes a lot of sense.
It's not
And
easy.
and so give us some tools, like, from what you learned about faith and trust in God, in terms of how that changed your perspective. You said it was, like, so mind-blowing how, when you learned it, how to have that relationship with God. Can you give us, like, a couple of tools of what we can do
Yeah.
in our own lives to incorporate that trust?
Yes, of course. I want to make one disclaimer. Yeah, I just want to make a disclaimer that the anxiety and depression that I was experiencing were
Mm-hmm.
circumstantial. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that there are many people that suffer with an anxiety disorder or depression that's more clinical. And it's important to note that sometimes medication is needed in order to get to the place that I was able to get to without medication, right? Because for
Mm-hmm.
me, it wasn't a chemical imbalance and it wasn't a disorder. It was circumstantial for me, which, by the way, they're both very, very real. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
want people to think that this is instead of medication. The thing is that a person can be on meds for anxiety, for depression, for one, for both, for all, and it can still not really be helping them much. And that's because
Mm-hmm.
even what I was saying about learning emunah and bitachon and learning about creating a relationship with God is something we need to do whether we're on meds or we're not on meds. The
Right.
medication will only get you to a place where you'll be able to be receptive and to be able to be open to learning about this relationship with God. So you might need the meds in order to get there. But even if you're on it, we all need to develop our relationship with God no matter what. So I wanted to make that disclaimer that if you need
That's a
the
good point. Yes.
right, like don't,
Very, very important. Very important point.
yeah, very
Absolutely.
important to understand. Okay.
Right.
And who knows, if I knew about medication back then, maybe I would have taken some just to take the edge off a bit, just to get, thank God I didn't
Right.
need it. But if you do need it, that's not a problem. It's just don't
Mm-hmm.
rely on the medication in the place of a relationship with God. You're going to need both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to that place, um, it just changes everything because you realize that, whew, oh, I don't control the world. Okay, there's somebody up there who's much more powerful than I am. There's somebody who does a much better job at controlling the world than I do. Okay, and I'm very thankful for that. There's somebody who really cares about me. There's somebody who believes in me more than I believe in myself. There's somebody who really wants what's best for me. Wow. Okay, I need to sit back and trust. And I went back and I looked at my track record that I had with God, and I was like, He's never let me down yet. He's always taken care of me. So why
Mm-hmm.
would He stop now? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings you to a place of acceptance because it brought me, I was scared all the time. I developed this um, my anxiety actually turned into agoraphobia, where I was not able to, and agoraphobia is the fear of open spaces and public places. I'm an extrovert. Okay. And I found
Right.
myself hiding in my
Par
home.
excellence. Right.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
found myself hiding. I didn't want to go on buses anymore. I didn't want to go to public places anymore. I was so scared. I didn't want to go on a plane. I was scared of everything. I was scared of everything just blowing up all over the place. Walking down the street, I developed these crazy irrational phobias, like things that
Mm-hmm.
make no sense. I felt like the street light was going to fall onto my head if I stood under a street light. Like I'm getting really vulnerable
Wow.
here because I'm explaining. I think people probably experience this phobias that make no sense. I would walk down the street and I thought the cars are going to come onto the sidewalk and just jump me. Like
Mm-hmm.
things that were like irrational. Like these things just don't happen. And it was just I was scared of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to this level of acceptance where I realized whatever does happen, first of all, chances are they won't happen. The thing that we're most, we spend 99% of the things we're worried about don't happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know, maybe worrying is good. Maybe worrying makes it not happen. I don't know. But we worry, 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 and they never happen. Right. So we waste so much time worrying about them. And then I realized, first of all, let me put all of that on God. Why should I carry it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I'm scared it will, but it probably won't. Let me put that all on Him. Then I said, recognizing that God loves me and only wants what's best for me was helping me able to realize that whatever does happen is always going to be the best thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this level
Wow.
of acceptance. It's going to be the best thing. So we always pray that everything is wonderful and everything is great and everything. But at the same time, we're always praying that, God, just take good care of me, take good care
Right.
of me, keep loving me, we know, and let me feel your love. Let me feel your protection. The state of that the world is in today, right? Everybody's always like, aren't you worried? Aren't you scared? Aren't you? Why are we scared? God is in control. Everybody else is puppets. Everyone are
Mm-hmm.
puppets. God is in control when we have this acceptance of we're in God's hands. It's okay, right? Everything changes. So that's
That's
really,
beautiful. Really, that's beautiful. But like I'm just trying to understand, and I'm sure some of our listeners are probably wondering, how do you go from that? Okay, there's that knowledge, and that's important. That knowledge to know that God is good, that God loves me, that God wants only the good for me, and actually applying it in your life. Like there's the brain that might know that, and then there's the feeling when I'm going through a challenge, when I'm suffering through something. How do I actually make it a part of my being? Was it that you study this every day? Was it that you thought about this every day? Like how did you make it a part of your new self, your new identity? So much so that it stopped you from actually feeling the worries when you were in the street, stopped you from having those fears when you walked somewhere and you didn't think anymore that the light was going to fall down on you or something like that.
you know, David HaMelech teaches us in Tehillim, King David. He says in the book of Psalms, Kagamul aleimo. What does that mean? He says our relationship with God is like, should be as if we are infants and God is carrying us in his hands. And when
Mhm.
you have that image, right? If you take a baby all day long, you're holding your baby and you are traveling here and you're traveling there and you go to the supermarket and then you go to an event and then you go on a plane, you travel, you're in a new state and then you're at a wedding and then, and you ask that baby at the end of the day, you say, whoa, you did a lot today. You're like, where were you today? The baby will say, in my mommy's hands, right?
Right.
Like the baby couldn't care less where he was. Like he didn't even know where he was. He was in his mommy's hands, right? If you're on a plane and there's crazy turbulence, right? And everybody's petrified, everyone's scared, everyone's like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Who's laughing and giggling on that plane? The baby. The baby's like, wee! Like they couldn't care less because they're
Right.
in their mommy's hands, right?
Mm.
When we are an infant, like when we consider ourselves like an infant in God's hands, we feel like we're being carried. And that means
Mm.
that it doesn't mean you don't experience the fear. It means that you know how to relate to the fear. You know that the fear can't take over my life. I've experienced lots of fear since then, right? But I have learned that the fear can't take over my life. My faith has to
Mm.
take over my life. I have to be able to stop and say, okay, that was scary. Okay. Or, I'm a little afraid of that. Okay. But 1 minute, Hashem is so much more powerful than this fear. And
Mhm.
there's something that we say in our daily prayers. There is a special prayer called Adon Olam that I'm sure you're aware of. For those of you who are watching this, Adon Olam is an incredible prayer. It's my favorite. I don't know if do you have a favorite prayer?
There's so many,
There's so
but
many, it's
yeah,
hard to choose. Adon
right.
Olam became my favorite prayer. And it's all about, if you read through it, word for word, you can find,
I think the Rebbe said that his favorite prayer was the Moda'ani because it just starts
ah,
your day with just this recognition that it's not about me, it's about giving thanks to God and all that God
yes,
has done. But yeah,
yes.
Adon Olam is great. Tell us more.
But yeah, that's the best way to start off the day. Like, which is
Absolutely.
amazing, by the way. The words of Moda Ani, right? You say Moda Ani lefanecha, which means it's weird because it's like it's written. If you know anything about Hebrew grammar, it's grammatically incorrect, right? It should be Ani Moda,
Mm.
right? But it's moda'ani, which is it like the first thing we're opening up like one eye, the other eye is still like glued shut, and we're like getting all poetic. We're like, grateful am I? It should be like, right? It's like this why is that? Because if the first word out of your mouth in the morning is ani, right? It's like the day is here to serve me. It's a
Right.
completely different attitude than if the first word out of your mouth is modah. I am thankful, right?
Mm.
Thankful am I. The whole day changes. So that's Modani is an incredible prayer. Moving forward, after that, we have a prayer that's called Adon Olam. Adon Olam is all about God's omnipotence, his omniscience in this world, being the all-powerful God. And it's just incredible. It gives you so much encouragement when you read it. You just feel so safe. Like, oh, that's my God, Um, but if you think about it, there's a verse in there in Adon Olam, Vehu echad ve'ein sheni, which
Mm.
means that he is one and there is no other God. Now, what's interesting to me is that when you're reading this verse, Who's praying Adon Olam? It's all people who believe in one God. We know there's one God. There's no one who prays Adon Olam who doesn't believe in one God. So why are we reading that verse? Why are we saying that every day? There's only one God. There is no other. We know that. We believe that, right? Here's what I think. Because we all believe in one God and that there is only one God. But sometimes I think we give power to something that isn't God. We give, right? We give power to people. We give power to money. We give power to so many things. We also give power to our anxiety. We give power to our fears. We give it power. And God says, my dear child, hi, I'm here. I am here to take care of you. If you give the power to your fear or to your anxiety, I have to take a back step and let that thing have the power, because we get whatever we choose to give power to, that's how it gets its power, right? That's how God runs this world. So we could allow the fear or the anxiety to control us, or we could say, whoa, 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 God's here. Let me give him the power, right? And we get to choose. And we know when we give God the power, our life has so much more peace in it, right? We just feel more peaceful. So that's
And I think also you're able to then actualize what you need, because in your story you speak about how then you went out to teach, and then you went out, you had the confidence to do that. You had the ability to do that, because when you're so into your fears or into your anxieties, you feel that darkness almost surround you. It doesn't give you the power to even reach out to do anything, the confidence to do anything.
absolutely.
So here you almost become more in touch with yourself, like you were more in touch with what you needed, because you kind of let go of yourself,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Because when you're holding on, when you're so scared and worried and anxious all the time, that's a lot of me thought, right?
Mm,
It's a lot of, oh, but I'm scared, but I don't want to do it. But what if? But what if? And it's all this like what if of anxiety all over the place. And it's all a lot of thinking about me, right?
right.
But when you're really in touch with yourself and with your needs and with who you are, you're able to step out of yourself a little bit and be more about the world and be more about the externalities around you, be more about giving in a healthy way as opposed to just needing, because you could never be filled up when you're just filled with all that worry. But when you're in touch with your needs and then you know how to fill those needs, then you don't have to be so consumed with thinking about yourself anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah, for your stories are so incredible, the different things that you went through. And I know after that you did move to Mexico, which was a
Whew.
completely completely different
A
culture, completely
whole other
different
story.
everything. And then I guess you had to once again regain your footing, regain who you are, regain your identity, regain your connection.
I finally found myself and found my place. And I was so happy and accomplishing so much and producing, and everything was amazing. And then we decided that, again, this was another area where we had to choose what was right over what was easy, right? Living in Israel finally became our comfort zone, and we were finally happy there. And then we had to make a decision to move to Mexico because my husband's community, where he was from, they were very secular and very distant from Torah. They were really ready. He used to go back every year between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. He used to go to Mexico. I stayed alone in Israel with all my babies, and he used to go. He stayed there for 10 days and he would teach Torah, and he created a whole second minyan on Yom Kippur and had a lot of people davening there. And slowly, they kept saying, okay, we're ready to learn. When are you coming to Mexico? And finally, we had to make a
Mm,
decision to move to Mexico. That was
mm.
hard, hard, hard. The decision wasn't so hard. I was 27, idealistic. I was like, I love tacos. Let's go to Mexico. A lot more than tacos awaited us there, right? And it was hard. It was hard. I lost again my whole identity that I just worked so hard creating for myself, or any of the identities that I just kind of fit into my birth or whatever it was. I lost everything. I was American. I was Ashkenazi. I was an English speaker. I was, an observant religious Jew. I moved to Mexico, to this community where they're all Mexican, Sephardi, speak Spanish, not religious at all. Like all the boxes that I fit into, I no longer fit into over there, you know?
Right.
But yet I didn't fit into those boxes either. So I come in there and I was like in no man's land. I'm like, who am I? And again, I'm this social butterfly who felt like she had her wings cut off. There was
Mm,
no one to talk to. Nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Spanish. I knew one word of Spanish, cucaracha, la cucaracha, that's all I knew. And which means
Right.
cockroach, by the way. And
Oh,
in case you're wondering.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Important
I was like,
word.
where's that going to get me, So
Right.
it was a whole nother level of being lost, and alone. The loneliness that I experienced there was, it was tough, tough, tough. There was no one to talk to. And in addition to the fact I had kids that were in school, I couldn't communicate with the teachers. I couldn't communicate with the schools. My kids were having a little bit of a hard time, and I couldn't even figure out what they needed. Like, it was a mess, And once again, I felt myself falling into this delicate emotional state,
Mhm.
where I was like, who am I? What am I doing? Where do I belong? And I was the Rebbitzin of a community. So I had to smile, and I had to go to shul every Shabbos, and I had to invite people over to my Shabbos table. And I did all the shopping and the cooking and the preparing and the serving and the everything. And then I would just sit at my own Shabbos table without understanding a word and without being able to say a word. Everything was in Spanish. And I would just sit there, and I'm like I had no
Mhm.
personality. I was my husband's little trophy wife. No, I couldn't connect. I couldn't, it was really tough. And in addition to all the social things, um, I also couldn't give all the things that I had to give because I didn't have enough people to receive what I had to give. All
Mhm.
of my talents and my strengths and everything had to do with the English language. So it was tough. It was tough. I don't know how much
So what
time
was
we have to continue.
Yeah, we have a
Right.
lot more time.
I
So,
know.
but can you give us in a nutshell,
Yes.
what
I am going to finish. I'll end off now, even though there's so much to say and there's so many hilarious stories I can share with you. We'll have to save that for another time. But as such, Belina Adar. But I will share with you a mindset shift that I had that changed everything for me and that I use till this day. And I want to share that because anyone that I have ever shared this with has started using it in their lives, and it made all the difference. So I'm going to share it with you now. So let me just explain that it was very, very hard for me for a few years. When I was living in Israel, it took about 3 years for that whole shift and until I really felt good. So I said to
Mhm.
myself, okay, so it takes 3 years, fine. So for the first 3 years, I allowed myself to just go through whatever I was feeling. And after 3 years, when I saw that I was not any better and it was really, really hard for me, that's when I fell even deeper into, the delicate state of my emotions, and where I really felt really, really down because I said, "Oh no, how long is this going to take?" Um, and it was tough. And also, by the way, at this point, I was already comfortable sharing things with my husband, but I didn't want to share all this with him because I didn't want it to disturb his work. He was building a
Mhm.
community. He was doing such great work. I didn't want him to be sitting there worried that his wife is sitting at home crying all day. So
Mhm.
I chose not to share it with him yet. But of course, I shared some things. He knew that I was struggling somehow, right? Um, but but it was tough. Now, one day I received an email from somebody back in Israel, one of my friends back there, and it wasn't an email just to me. It was a mass email to send to many people. Now, remember, this was still before we already had cell phones. This was way past that, but we didn't have social media yet. Like there was no
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram and any of that stuff. So I was still very disconnected from everyone and from the whole world. I didn't know anything that was going on anywhere. But there was email, and I got an email from a friend back in Israel, and she said that there was a certain friend of ours who was sick, and in the merit of a refuah shalema, of a recovery for this woman, she was inviting everyone to what's called in Hebrew a tanis dibor, which means a day without speaking. That no speech out of our mouths other than prayer or Torah learning, right?
Mhm.
So I received this email and I burst into tears and I said, Atanis Dibor, I haven't spoken to anybody in months, in years.
Mhm.
There's no one that I could talk to. I said, this woman should have a complete recovery by now, right? I haven't been speaking.
Right.
And it was very hard for me, but that gave me, it was an epiphany moment. It was this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I could use email. I could connect to people through email. And I decided in
Mhm.
that moment, now I'm going to say something that today sounds cliche, sounds, oh yeah, of course. No, this was innovative for me. This wasn't done yet back then, as far as I knew. I never heard of this before. I said I was going to send an email on the weekly parsha. because that way I'll be able to teach. I'm desperate to teach, people, and I could do it in English, and I can reach so many people. I was so excited with my new idea. I started sending a weekly email. The first week that I started happened to have been the week of Lech Lecha. Now, in the parsha of Lech Lecha is the story with Abraham, where he leaves. God said to him, Abraham, leave everything you know from your past, everything, and go to an unknown place where I am sending you to the future. Leave your family, your friends, your community, your language, your culture, everything. And I'm reading this, and I was like,
wow.
whoa! I never related
Wow.
to somebody so much in my life. I was like I really connected. And it was an incredible parsha. I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is me. And I recognized something, and I'm hurrying up with this, okay? I recognized something that I never noticed before. I was 30 years old about, and I've been learning the parsha for 25 years, at least. And I noticed that Lech Lecha, those words are written twice in the parsha. The first time, it was when God said to him, leave your past, leave everything behind and move into the future. And the second time was at the end of the parsha when God said to him, go bring your son Isaac up to the Akedah, right? Up for the sacrifice. God, the words that we use were Lech Lecha. I never paid attention to that before. And I said, there has to be a correlation here between the two Lech Lechas. And that's when it hit me. And I realized, oh my gosh, the first time God was telling Abraham, go leave your past behind. The second time God was telling him, go leave your future behind. All the plans you thought you had. No, I'm throwing you a curveball now. None of that. You do what I tell you to do. Forget about what your plans were. And that's when I stood up and I said, oh my goodness, is that what you're doing? Like I said, God was telling me, Yaffa, I saw how you served me in your past within your comfort zone, and when you were popular, when you spoke your language, when you had friends, when you were with people. Now, let me see you serve me when I take all of that away from you. Once again, get back out of that comfort zone. Let me see how you serve me then. And I realized in that moment that I had been trying to serve God on my terms. I kept saying, God, you gave me all these talents, but you threw me into this place. You don't let me use them now. Like, how am I supposed to serve you? What do you want from me? And God was saying, I don't want you to serve me on your terms. I want you to serve me on my terms. I threw you into that place because I want you to learn Spanish. And I want you to connect with those people, not with people that it's easy for you to connect with. And that's when I stood up and I put my hands on my hips and I said, really, God? Game on, right? I'm here for it. And that's when I had this mindset shift. And I'm going to tell you what that shift was now that I told you that I do till this day. We'll end with that, just a practical tool that everyone can take with them from this, if that's okay. Yeah?
Sure, please.
So
Sure.
after I had that whole mindset shift where I was like, okay, God, I'm ready. I'm here. I'm going to learn Spanish. I used to be so angry at Spanish, by the way. I was angry at the language because Spanish ruined my life. It ruined my life, this stupid language, right? I couldn't do anything. I was literally, and the next morning I woke up and I said, okay. I said, yes, I'm lonely. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm scared. I had all of those emotions, but I realized that I have the capacity, I have the ability to hold multiple, diverse, and even opposing emotions simultaneously. We don't only have the capacity to hold one emotion. So that's the moment that I created this game that I call Truth or Dare. Truth or Dare. Have you played that at your 7th grade sleepovers? Yes, you have, right? This is a different Truth or Dare. This is a game where I said to myself, the truth is, I feel lonely, but I dare myself to go make connections anyway. The truth is, I feel sad, but I dare myself to go be happy anyway. The truth is, I feel scared, but I dare myself to go be brave anyway and to go do the thing anyway. The truth is, I'm scared to speak Spanish, I said, but I dare myself to go learn it anyway. Right?
Wow.
And when you recognize that you could have multiple emotions at the same time, that's okay. I'm not getting rid of the loneliness. The loneliness was there. It's true. It's real, right? It's a part of me. But I get to choose which of those two emotions, the loneliness or the connections, which of those two will be the compass by which I navigate my life.
Hmm.
Will I allow
I
the
love that.
loneliness to lead me or the love to lead me? Will I allow the sadness to lead me or the happiness to lead me? They're both there. It's okay. We can have both of them, right? We get to choose. And that's what changed everything for me. And you can fill in the blank, whatever emotion you're experiencing, fill in the blank, right? The truth is, I feel heartbroken, but I dare myself to go love anyway, right? The
Hmm.
truth is, I feel unqualified, but I dare myself to go out there anyway, to apply anyway, to whatever, anything that's going on in life. It's okay. Acknowledge the negative emotion or the difficult emotion. Acknowledge it. And then recognize that you have the strength, the power, the ability, the capacity to have a positive leaning emotion alongside that too, a more productive emotion, right? Alongside that too, that you can choose to lead you instead of the negative one. And that's
Wow.
truth or dare. And that's what changed everything for me.
That's incredible. I love that. That's a great tool, and that's a great thing to keep in mind. That's amazing. Really amazing.
Thank you.
Yaffa, I could sit with you for another hour easily. We'll have
I
to do
know.
follow-up.
Okay, absolutely.
But this was so amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. I just wish you continued success in everything that you're doing. Continue
Amen.
your truth or dare to really dare
Amen.
yourself to the limit.
Dare yourself to
And
limit. And by the way, I just want to add in sometimes faith in God is a dare to. And it's important to understand
absolutely.
that. Sometimes we can say, oh, my life is so hard. This is so difficult. Yes, it is. But I dare myself to believe in God anyway, to trust in God anyway. Sometimes it's a dare.
Beautiful. Really beautiful. Really amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Yaffa,
Thank you
for
for
all
having
your
me,
inspiration,
Hannah.
for your wisdom.
It
Really,
was
really
it was the
special.
biggest treat. Thank you for having me here. And thanks to you all for watching. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. There's so many things in our lives that sometimes we go through that aren't necessarily the biggest, hugest suffering or challenge, like the death of a close one, but maybe a move, or maybe a situation where we feel so lonely, or maybe a situation where we're feeling so sad. And I think Yaffa went through a lot of those situations, and she really gives us the tools to feel what she was going through at the time, but also how to look at the situation in a different way, how to kind of do that mindset shift that she described. And what I loved most about this interview was the description that she had of God holding us like an infant, and we could be going everywhere that we are, and the turbulence on the plane, or the situation that we're in, or the scare, the fear that we're feeling can be all around us, but we're still that infant in God's arms. And if we could visualize that metaphor, that example, I think that really helps us in so many ways. And I also really loved her mindset shift, the dare, the truth or dare, that it's true we can be having two different feelings at the same time, two different emotions at the same time, but we can dare ourselves to try to expand our vision, and to, even though we're feeling one way, to still um, allow ourselves to try to grow. If you enjoy watching these videos, I hope that you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. Please, please look for us as well on Spotify or on Apple Music. If you're on the go, if you're going for a walk, if you're cooking in your kitchen and you're trying to listen to something inspirational, it's a perfect way to really inspire yourself with these episodes of different people and the courageous paths that they have taken. Thank you so much for watching. Drop us a line, drop us a note, tell us what you're feeling, tell us about your feedback. We love to read it. We love to hear, what was it about this particular interview that inspired you, that caused you a mindset shift, that made you think deeper into a situation that you're going through. We love to hear it. We love to share it with others. And this way we really become together such an extraordinary community. Thank you for watching.